I never thought my life would unravel with just one envelope. It looked harmless enough, cream-colored with a satin ribbon, the kind of thing you'd expect to find at someone else's celebration. But when I tore it open and saw the names written in gold, my stomach dropped. Adrian and Rebecca invite you. My ex-boyfriend's name right there side by side with the woman he swore was just a coworker. 3 months ago, we were still sharing a couch, whispering about dreams that felt like they might come true. And now he was marrying her. At Bella Vista Hall, the exact place I had once imagined walking down the aisle myself. I sat down on the low wall outside my apartment, as if my legs couldn't hold me anymore. A wedding. His wedding. To her. It was like the universe had set up an entire stage just to mock me. First, the breakup served cold with that cliché line about needing to find himself. Then the Instagram posts, each one more humiliating than the last, showing him with her laughing, drinking, vacationing while I was barely scraping rent together. And now the final strike, a front row seat to their fairy tale. I threw the invitation onto my kitchen table and stared at it as if it had personally insulted me. I could hear my own voice whispering through clenched teeth. He's going to see. I'm going to that wedding. And I'm taking a date that will make Rebecca stumble in her heels. The problem was, I had no date. No boyfriend. No knight in shining armor waiting in the wings. Just me, my stack of overdue bills, and a fridge full of takeout containers. I binged chocolates and a rom-com that night pretending to laugh. But the truth was, I was plotting. I didn't need someone perfect. I just needed someone who could make Adrian regret every word he ever said to me. The next day, after yet another failed attempt to beg for my old job back, I went for a walk. My thoughts were bitter, circling around revenge, around humiliation, around how unfair life had been. And then I saw him. He was sitting near the entrance of a fancy restaurant, his back against the wall, hair, messy beard, unshaven, his jacket too worn for the warm weather. A man who looked like life had stripped him of everything but his eyes. His eyes didn't look defeated. They looked like they'd seen too much, carried too much, and yet refused to break. He wasn't begging, he wasn't even asking for food. He was just watching like a stranger, studying the world. Something about him pulled me in. I stopped and asked, "Hey, you okay?" He lifted his head slowly. His voice was deep, rough, but carried a strange kind of peace when he answered, "Depends on what you call okay." I laughed before I realized I was laughing. I teased him about not having shoes, about looking like he'd lost his way home. He replied with a half smile, "I lost more than that, but now I'm just enjoying the quiet." That's when it hit me, the craziest idea of my life. I asked his name. "Dylan," he said, hesitating, as if even that was a secret. I told him mine, and then before my brain could stop me, I said the words that would change everything. "Come with me to a wedding this Saturday. I'll give you a shower, clean clothes, real food. All you have to do is stay by my side and look like you're madly in love with me." He blinked, stunned, then smirked, as if trying to decide whether I was insane or just desperate. "Is this a date or identity theft?" he asked. I grinned. "A temporary job." He studied me for a long moment, and then for reasons I still don't understand, he reached out his hand and shook mine. Well, why not? That was the moment I signed the craziest contract of my life. When I brought Dylan back to my apartment, it was like inviting a ghost into my world. He was too calm, too composed for someone who supposedly lived on the streets. He dropped his worn backpack by the couch, asked if I had coffee, and sat down as if he belonged there. And for the first time I wondered, who are you really? But I brushed it off. I had rules for him: no disappearing before Saturday, no crazy stories. And most importantly, he had to act like a man who was head over heels for me. He agreed, smiling like it was all a game. But when I asked if he had rules for me, he gave only one: don't ask about my past. I should have listened to that warning. I should have walked away. But instead, I pulled him deeper into my life. I cut his hair, trimmed his beard, dressed him up in clean clothes. And when he stepped out of the bedroom, transformed, my heart skipped a beat. He didn't look like a man who belonged on the street anymore. He looked like he belonged on a magazine cover. I told myself it was just part of the plan, just a performance. but deep down I already knew I was in over my head. The week leading up to the wedding felt like living inside a storm I couldn't control. Dylan settled into my apartment with an ease that unsettled me. He wasn't loud, he wasn't demanding, he was just there like a steady shadow. Every morning he would make coffee before I even got out of bed, humming some tune I didn't recognize. And every night he'd take the couch without complaint, as if he had lived 1,000 lives on harder beds, and this was luxury to him. But what disturbed me most wasn't his presence, it was how much I started to depend on it. One evening, as I stood by the bathroom door with a flat iron in hand, Dylan stepped out in the shirt and suit I had borrowed from my cousin. The transformation was staggering. Gone was the man I had plucked from the pavement outside a restaurant. Standing before me was someone tall, commanding with sharp features, and eyes that carried a weight I couldn't decipher. He looked at himself in the mirror with no surprise at all, as if this was a reflection he had seen before. "You look—" I paused, swallowing the sudden rush of nerves. "Like you belong at the wedding more than I do." He smirked, adjusting the cufflinks. "Maybe that's the point." I laughed, but it didn't last. Something about his composure, the quiet confidence beneath his ragged exterior, made me wonder if I was the one being fooled. The night before the wedding, I confessed my real fear to him. What if Adrian looks right through this? What if he sees me for what I really am? Desperate, pathetic, still hung up on him. Dylan leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. His gaze was steady, piercing. "If he doesn't see your worth tomorrow, then he's the fool, and trust me, he'll regret it." The certainty in his voice made my chest tighten. I wanted to ask why he believed in me so easily, but his eyes warned me off. That one rule, "don't ask about my past," hung between us like a locked door. The wedding day arrived wrapped in silk and cruelty. Bella Vista Hall was every bit as dazzling as I had imagined when Adrian once promised it would be our venue. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above violins played softly in the background, and every guest looked like they had stepped out of a magazine spread. When Dylan offered his arm, I clung to it like it was armor. Heads turned as we walked in, some in curiosity, others in suspicion. I knew what they were thinking. Wasn't she the ex? Who's the man beside her now? And for once, I didn't care. Let them stare. Let them wonder. The real test came when Adrian saw me. He froze mid-sentence, his champagne glass nearly slipping from his hand. Rebecca, radiant in white, followed his gaze, her lips tightening when she saw Dylan. I almost smiled. Almost. We took our seats near the front, and though the ceremony blurred into a haze of vows and applause, I felt the weight of Adrian's stare burning into me. When it was over and the reception began, he found his chance. He cornered me near the dance floor, his voice low, his smile forced. "You brought a date." I tilted my chin, feigning indifference. "Isn't that what people do at weddings?" His eyes flicked to Dylan across the room, who was standing tall, speaking with a group of men in suits like he belonged there. Adrian's jaw tightened. "You don't even know who he is, do you?" The words cut deeper than I expected. Because he was right. I didn't know who Dylan really was. I only knew what he wanted me to see. And yet when Dylan returned, sliding an arm protectively around my waist, I leaned into him without hesitation. Adrian's smile cracked. "Be careful, darling," he muttered. "Sometimes strays bite." Before I could respond, Dylan's voice cut in, calm, but sharp as steel. "And sometimes the ones who look tame are the most dangerous." Adrian flinched, and for the first time since the breakup, I saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. I saw fear. The rest of the night was a blur of tension glasses, clinking, laughter ringing, but beneath it all a current of unease. Every time Dylan's hand brushed mine, every time his gaze lingered, I felt the ground shifting beneath me. I had come to the wedding to make Adrian jealous. But now, as the night wore on, I realized something terrifying. Dylan wasn't just playing a role. He was unraveling a story of his own, one that was about to crash into mine in ways I could never have imagined. The reception glittered with laughter and shallow conversation, but to me, every sound felt sharp, every glance heavy. I stayed close to Dylan, his steady presence both a shield and a riddle I couldn't solve. He wasn't just surviving this night, he was commanding it. The men in suits listened to him with respect. The women glanced at him with curiosity. It was as if he had slipped back into a world he had once belonged to. Rebecca finally approached us. Her perfect smile was painted on too tightly, her eyes glinting with something sharp. "Sophia," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "I almost didn't recognize you. And who is your guest?" Dylan extended his hand, his posture flawless, his smile calm. "Dylan," he said smoothly. "Just someone who was lucky enough to be invited tonight." Rebecca hesitated, then shook his hand, though I noticed the way her eyes flickered with unease. For a second, I wondered if she had recognized something in him, something familiar. Adrian appeared at her side, his jaw tight, his arm wrapping around her waist in a possessive grip. "You've upgraded," he sneered quietly, his voice meant only for me. "But tell me, Sophia, do you even know where you found him? Men like that don't just appear out of nowhere." Before I could answer, Dylan leaned in, his tone low, but unmistakably firm. "And women like you don't build happiness on betrayal without consequences." Adrian's face drained of color. Rebecca stiffened. And in that fragile pause, I realized Dylan wasn't just defending me, he was speaking from a place much deeper, much darker. The rest of the evening spiraled into a blur. We danced once, Dylan's hand firm at the small of my back, his gaze steady on mine. It should have felt like play acting, but it didn't. Every step, every breath carried a weight that left me trembling. For a moment, the room dissolved, and it was just him and me bound by something unspoken. But the spell shattered when Adrian's voice rose behind us. He had been drinking, his words slurred, his anger no longer contained. "Do you even know who you're with?" He spat across the dance floor, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. "He's not who you think he is." Gasps echoed, heads turned. My stomach dropped. Dylan's jaw tightened, but his hand never left mine. Adrian staggered closer, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you found some savior? Look at him. Do you even know what kind of man hides on the streets waiting for desperate women to pick them up?" My chest burned with humiliation. Every eye in the hall was on me. But Dylan didn't flinch. He released my hand only long enough to step forward, his voice calm but powerful. "You're right about one thing, Adrian. I'm not who she thinks I am." The silence that followed was suffocating. Dylan's gaze swept the room, then landed on me softer now. "But neither are you. You sold her dreams for your own ambition, traded love for convenience, and now you stand here pretending that makes you superior. It doesn't." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Rebecca's face blanched. Adrian's lips parted, but no words came. I felt my breath catch. Dylan had turned the tables without raising his voice, without losing control, but his words left me reeling too. If he wasn't who I thought he was, then who was he? The night ended in chaos. Rebecca pulling Adrian away, guests buzzing with gossip, me clutching my purse like it was the only thing holding me upright. Dylan stayed close, his hand at my elbow, guiding me out into the cool night air. Under the glow of the street lamps, I finally found my voice. "Who are you, Dylan?" My whisper shook, but it was all I could manage. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, then glanced up at the stars as if they held his answer. "Someone who knows what it's like to be broken. Someone who knows how betrayal feels." His eyes returned to mine, steady, unflinching. "And someone who isn't ready for you to know the rest." The words hung heavy between us, part confession, part warning, and in my heart I knew this was only the beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the words Dylan had spoken circling in my head like ghosts. Someone who knows what it's like to be broken. Someone who knows how betrayal feels. It was both too much and not enough, a truth wrapped in shadows. He stayed on the couch as always, but I could hear his breathing, steady, calm, almost deliberate. It was as if he'd trained himself to control even that. I wanted to ask again, to demand the truth, but something inside me whispered that if I pushed too hard, I might lose him. The following morning, as sunlight spilled weakly through the curtains, I found him already dressed, sipping coffee like he had lived here all his life. "We should talk," I said softly. He looked up, his gaze heavy, then set the mug down. "Do you want the version that will let you sleep, or the version that will keep you awake at night?" My heart skipped. The truth. He leaned back, exhaling slowly as if bracing himself. "I wasn't always who you saw on that street corner. Once I was the man Adrian pretends to be. I had money, power, a company with my name on the glass. And then I trusted the wrong people. His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists on the table. They took everything. Left me with nothing but debts, lawsuits, and a reputation that made me a ghost in my own city. I stared stunned. You were a CEO? He gave a humorless smile. Funny, isn't it? One day you're sitting at the head of the table, and the next you're sitting on the sidewalk. That's how fast betrayal cuts. My chest ached. He wasn't just a stranger I'd plucked from the street for a game of revenge. He was a man who had lived my worst fear, being discarded, forgotten, left to rot, while others feasted on what was once yours. But why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because I needed to know if you'd see me for me, without the title, without the money. Not the mask, not the empire, just the man underneath. His voice softened. And you did. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to the idea that fate had brought us together, that maybe both of us, two broken people, had found the one soul who understood. But doubt lingered. If he had been a CEO, then someone out there knew him, someone out there was watching. And that fear became reality sooner than I expected. 2 days later, as I walked back from the grocery store with Dylan carrying the heavier bags at my side, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, his eyes locking on Dylan with recognition sharp enough to cut. Mr. Hayes, the man said, his voice respectful, cautious. We've been looking for you. The blood drained from my face. Dylan froze, his expression unreadable. Then quietly he said, Not here. The man hesitated, then nodded, retreating into the car, which pulled away as silently as it had come. I stood rooted to the spot, clutching the grocery bag so tightly the paper began to tear. Mr. Hayes, I finally whispered. That's you, isn't it? His silence was louder than any confession. That night, as we sat in the dim light of my kitchen, Dylan finally spoke. Yes, Dylan Hayes. I disappeared because I had to, because the people who betrayed me weren't just thieves, they were dangerous, and going back means war. I stared at him, my heart pounding. The man I had thought was my shield at Adrian's wedding wasn't just some mysterious drifter. He was a storm, one that had been waiting for the right moment to break open. And somehow I had invited that storm into my home, into my life, into my heart. I should have been terrified, but instead I whispered the words that sealed my fate. Then I'll stand with you. Dylan's eyes softened, the weight of 20 lifetimes flickering in them. You don't know what that means. Maybe not, I said, my voice shaking, but I know what betrayal feels like, and I'm done running from it. For the first time, he reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was strong, steady, warm, and I knew no matter how much it cost me, I had already chosen him. The following weeks blurred into a strange rhythm. Dylan, no Mr. Hayes, moved through my small apartment with the grace of someone who had once lived in mansions, yet carried himself humbly, never demanding more than a cup of coffee in a quiet corner. But I felt the shift, the way his phone calls became longer, the way unfamiliar men in suits began appearing across the street, pretending to read newspapers or wait for buses that never came. His past wasn't just following him, it was surrounding us. One night, I found him on the balcony staring at the skyline. The city lights reflected in his eyes, but his mind was far away. You don't have to stay in this with me, he said softly. It's not your war. I leaned against the doorframe, hugging myself. You think I don't know what it's like to be discarded? Adrian didn't just break my heart. He stripped me of dignity, of self-worth. I've been humiliated in front of everyone who mattered. If standing with you means I finally fight back against the kind of betrayal that ruins lives, then yes, it is my war. He turned, the faintest smile tugging at his lips, but there was sorrow there too. You're braver than you should be. Not long after, the truth of his downfall began to surface in fragments. Over takeout dinners and quiet evenings, he revealed how his own board members had conspired with Amelia, the same woman Adrian married into Wealth's circle. Together, they had orchestrated a coup, painting Dylan as reckless, hiding documents that shifted blame for their corruption onto him. Overnight, he had gone from visionary to villain, his empire torn from his hands. Listening to him, I felt my chest ache with fury. Not just for what they had done, but for how familiar the pain was. Betrayal, I realized, wears many faces, but its sting is always the same. Then came the night everything shattered. We had been invited, no summoned, to a charity gala. Adrian and Rebecca's faces were plastered on the invitation, smug and golden. "It's a trap," I muttered, clutching the card. "Exactly," Dylan said calmly, "which is why we're going." I thought my heart might stop when we walked into that glittering hall. Chandeliers sparkled like diamonds. Laughter rang sharp as knives, and every face turned as Dylan entered in a suit tailored to perfection. Whispers erupted immediately. "He's alive, Dylan Hayes!" The crowd rippled with shock. Adrian froze mid-conversation, his glass trembling in his hand. Rebecca's painted smile faltered, her eyes widening as if she had seen a ghost. Dylan's voice was low, "Meant for me alone. Stay close. Tonight they learn the cost of betrayal." The speeches began, but tension suffocated the air. Halfway through, Adrian couldn't hold back. He strode across the stage, his voice rising with false bravado. "Look who crawled back from the ashes. The man who lost everything because he couldn't handle the empire he built." Gasps swept the room. I felt my face burn, rage boiling inside me. But Dylan didn't flinch. He walked forward, steady, composed, and when he took the microphone, his voice thundered through the hall. "I lost everything," he said, eyes burning into Adrian's. "Not because I was weak, but because I trusted men like you. Men who build their thrones on lies and call it strength." A hush fell over the room. Dylan continued, his gaze sweeping the audience. "You all knew. You all watched. And you let it happen because betrayal is easier than courage. But tonight I stand here with nothing to hide, and that makes me stronger than I have ever been." The crowd erupted, some in applause, some in whispers of scandal. Rebecca's face blanched. Adrian's mask cracked, and for the first time I saw fear in their eyes. But as Dylan's hand found mine under the table later that night, I realized something far greater than revenge had taken root. We were no longer just two broken souls clinging to each other. We were a force neither betrayal nor shame could bury again. Yet even in that triumph a shadow lingered. Because exposing the truth was only the first battle. And wars built on betrayal are never won in a single night. The days after the gala felt like living at the edge of a cliff. Whispers of Dylan's return spread like wildfire through the city. Newspapers speculated, old business partners resurfaced, and Adrian's name appeared alongside his in scandalous headlines. For the first time in years, Dylan wasn't invisible, but that visibility came with danger. I could see the toll it took on him. He tried to hide it, to bury the exhaustion beneath calm words and steady eyes, but I knew better. Every night when the world was quiet, I'd find him at the balcony, a glass untouched in his hand, staring out like a man waiting for the storm to break. And it did. Adrian cornered us one evening, his mask stripped away, his voice venomous. "You think coming back changes anything? You're still ruined. And dragging her into this?" His eyes flicked to me, cruel and mocking. "She'll leave you like the rest when she sees you have nothing." My chest tightened, anger rising like fire. But before I could speak, Dylan stepped forward, his voice low but cutting. "The difference between us, Adrian, is that I don't need lies to keep her beside me. You, on the other hand, will spend the rest of your life wondering which smile in your house is hiding a knife." Adrian faltered, his face pale. His words stuck in his throat. For the first time, I saw him not as the man who had broken me, but as a coward who had built his world on sand. And in that moment, I knew I was free. When we left him standing there, defeated in his own arrogance, I felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders. Betrayal had defined me for so long. Shame had lived inside me like a parasite. But walking beside Dylan, I realized it didn't own me anymore. That night, Dylan finally let the last wall fall. His voice cracked as he confessed. "For 20 years, I thought I was unworthy of love, that no one could see past what I'd lost. And then you came. You didn't just see me, you chose me. Do you know what that means?" My tears fell freely as I whispered back, "It means you're not alone anymore. Neither of us are." He took my hand, then not with the caution of a broken man, but with the certainty of someone who had finally decided to live again. It wasn't just a touch, it was a vow. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild, not just his name, not just his life, but ourselves. Revenge no longer felt like the end goal. Karma had already taken its course, revealing Adrian for what he was, What mattered now was healing, choosing love in a world that had once taught us to fear it. And maybe that's the greatest revenge of all. Not proving them wrong with wealth or power, but proving them wrong by refusing to let betrayal destroy who we are. So if you're listening to my story, carrying your own scars, I want you to hear this. You are not what they did to you. You are not the lies they told or the shame they left behind. You are the choice you make every day to rise, to keep walking, to love even when it terrifies you. That is your power. That is your freedom. And if my story touched something in your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, what betrayal have you survived and how did it change you? Because your story matters too, and maybe sharing it will be the first step in setting yourself free.